Morning, Glory, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening this morning. Let me summarize yesterday's White House briefing for you. Stay home for 30 days. If you have an essential job, obviously you can't. You have to go to the market to get food. You have to go to the drugstore or the pharmacy to get your drugs. It's fine. You can go get takeout. You can go to restaurants to get takeout. Otherwise, stay home. What's the difference if we do that? Last year, 2019, before the virus, in 2019, you know how many Americans died? Any guess? Anyone thinking out there? I don't know. And you're making a guess. 2,813,503 Americans died in 2019. That's according to the National Center for Health Statistics, which is part of the CDC. 2,000,008. If we don't do this, it could double, and perhaps more, but at least 2 million people would die. If we do this, we'll add between 100,000 and 250,000 deaths. So we'll go to 3 million from 2.8 million. That will be hard. It will be catastrophic for the families involved. It will not be catastrophic for the country, and the economy will rebound. So we need people to stay home for 30 days. It's April 1st. No April Fool jokes today. I've done some amazing ones in the past, but it's in the age of the virus. So just trying to give you the stats. Now, over at the Financial Times, you should know that in 35 countries in Europe, there are more than 100 cases. There are 860,455 cases worldwide. There are 42,353 deaths worldwide. The new death tolls are rising in almost every country. China, they are not rising, but we don't trust China's statistics. Greece, for whatever reason, chaotic, crazy Greece, very low number of cases, very low spread. Go figure. Iraq, our soldiers there are pretty safe. Very low number of cases, very low spread. Go figure, maybe they're not testing. But what matters the single most, probably the most important thing, and we've got it now, is a antibody test. Earlier today, I posted over at my Twitter site, and I really encourage you. I'm trying to be positive, assure, inform, encourage on Twitter as well as on the radio, that there are two kinds of tests. An antigen test, which detects the presence or the absence in the body of the coronavirus, which causes COVID-19. An antibody test is the second kind, which just tells you whether or not someone has had the COVID-19 in the past. Antibody tests are being prioritized by the government, including in Europe and the UK and Germany and here, because they are essential to informing individuals whether they can return to mixing safely in society without passing on or picking up the infection. So it's kind of like a get-out-of-jail-free card. But we're just ramping that up, and the good news is that we're getting pretty good at that. We're going to roll this stuff out across the United States. Now, yesterday, there was quite an exchange between President Trump and Jim Acosta. Unusual because it was perfectly professional and calm. No grandstanding, no anger, no nothing. Jim was saying, did you do anything wrong? Could we have been ahead of where we are? Followed up by another question by I don't know who. Were you quoting my interview with McConnell yesterday, Leader McConnell, saying that impeachment slowed down the response of the government? The president said, of course impeachment diverted me. Of course. I was impeached. Of course it took up some time. But then Dr. Birx got up and said, and I think this is important for everyone to understand, we don't know if we could have done any better, and we'll never know because we don't know when it got here. And until it got here, we weren't going to do this thing we're doing right now because it's expensive. It's like it's buying the Lamborghini of public health that nobody buys until you have to do it. Now, nobody in the world does this until you have to do it. And we had to do it. So until we saw people turning up sick in large numbers like in Italy, nobody's at fault. And we did not lose time. We may not have been paying attention to the threat as much collectively. We were on this show. I put this show up against any other media outlet in the United States. We are the equal of any other media outlet in the United States in covering this from the moment it appeared, just like Tom Cotton. I don't trust the PRC, and neither does Tom Cotton. I know the history of SARS, MERS, H1N1 because I was a public health board member for 17 years when I lived on the West Coast. So I've read The Great Influenza. Got a call from a reporter yesterday asking me for historic parallels. And good reporter. We'll see what she writes when the story comes out. And I said, The Great Influenza is the book everyone needs to read. And it tells you exactly what not to do because Woodrow Wilson was the worst president ever in public health terms. So we have the worst president ever. They were looking for historical comparisons, and I know this pretty well, and I explained this audience is totally up to speed because, except for my new affiliate down on Bristol, Virginia, and Kingsport, Tennessee, and the Tri-City areas, 92.9, welcome. But I have been intent on getting you ready. Now, what I do want to do is play for you a little bit of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who, as the world falls into crisis, his profile will increase. The White House briefings are focused on the United States. Secretary Pompeo's briefings are focused on the world. Here is cut number 7 at the State Department yesterday, Secretary of State Pompeo.
We've now made available a total of number $274 million in funding to as many as 64 countries. That money will go to some of the world's most at-risk peoples. You can go to state.gov to find a fact sheet. We'll talk about what we're doing country by country. It'll give the breakdown. We'll put that up at the end of last week. We've been at this a long time. We know how to help people around the world. Since 2009, American taxpayers have generously funded more than $100 billion in health assistance and nearly $70 billion in humanitarian assistance. That's billion with a B. But our help is much more than money. The CDC has 6 staffers on the ground working with Namibia's health ministry. The FDA, as an example, is co-chairing a virtual international conference on developing a COVID-19 vaccine. Americans from all across the Trump administration are working diligently to put this crisis back in the box. Another example, we're working constantly with NGOs to deliver medicines, medical supplies, and food to those in need in Syria, including in regime-held areas. This is a humanitarian crisis. 2, we'll continue helping UN agencies and NGOs build more water, sanitation, and health facilities in camps and informal IDP settings all across northern Syria to help prevent the spread of the virus in that difficult place.
He went on to say this about what we've got. Cut number 8.
As of today, we've repatriated over 26 or 27,000 U.S. citizens from more than 50 countries. The stories of our team's heart and character and commitment to excellence are truly amazing. Let me give you just a couple of examples. In Bhutan, no easy place to get to. An American was critically ill from the virus, intubated on a ventilator, and frankly expected to die in a country located in one of the most remote corners of the world. But we came to the rescue. Our team arranged a biocontainment transport from Bhutan to an intensive care unit in Baltimore, Maryland, a distance of nearly 8,000 miles. To fly through Kathmandu, there's about 12 pilots that can make that flight. It was one of the most complex medical evacuations in history.
That is Mike Pompeo. I hope every morning the Secretary of State does the state of the world vis-a-vis COVID, and every afternoon the President and the Vice President, Doctors Birx and Fauci, do the state of the virus in the United States. That's good information flow. That's what we need. Stay tuned. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Go faster, Mark. Faster, Dick. I've got a couple of buddies who are on the treadmill playing them the greatest all-time running song. The perfect pace for a 7:15 mile. You may not know that. I know that. You can do 7:15, Mark. Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt here. Look, time for the morning markets update. Brought to you by Birch Gold. Now, I cannot tell you folks enough. I tell you every day, if you have not yet diversified and you have an asset that is appreciated because of the crisis, diversify. Most of you have assets in a retirement account, and that's what Birch Gold Group focuses on. You can text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747 and roll it over and diversify it into actual, honest-to-gosh, physical gold and silver. In a vault, backed up by Birch Gold's longtime record, great ratings. You can also buy gold directly from them. You can text my name, Hugh, to 474747. You can go to hughgold.com, or you can call them at 1-800-434-GOLD. This morning, gold is back over $1,600 an ounce. When I first told you to start diversifying, I told you do it at 1435. It's at 1608. Given the news about the return of the virus to Asia, I suspect that gold will continue to climb. I'm not a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but some stocks are doing very well. Amazon, Netflix. Some stocks are in the tank. Do not sell a stock that's down. Wait and see if. Well, I don't give invested advice. Some stocks you should get out of because they're doomed. I'm not going to say which ones. Talk to your investment advisor. Others like Amazon and Netflix, they're like gold. But if you had a bond fund and it's gone up, you might diversify right now. Birch Gold. Now, overnight, man, slaughter. Japan down 4.5%. Hong Kong down 2.25%. England at this moment down 3.25%. Germany down 2.89%. Couple of reasons offered for this. The press conference yesterday, America is going to have between 100 and 240,000 deaths, and we're the best at this. We're the best. Now, that's a between 0.5% and 1% increase. Almost 10% increase in deaths on the higher end, because we have 2.8 million people die every year. So we'd have a 10% increase in deaths in the United States. That would be pretty staggering in 1 year. Not 10% of America, but a 10% increase in our death rate, and a doubling of it if we don't do anything. So it's kind of staggering, but what's really bothering people, you wouldn't know this unless you listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show, is the return of the virus to Asia where it had been previously routed or held in check. All right? This is a critical deal. Quote, Asian virus resurgence portends poorly for recovery hopes. That's from the Times of Israel. I add, never forget this is the PRC's fault. This is the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. They lied. Never forget that. But the virus has gone around the world. Now it's coming back into the Asian countries, which had suppressed it, brought by travelers who caught it after it. So this is what viruses do. They circulate, but they circulate much faster now. So that portend, we will need the antibody test. We will need a vaccine. We will need treatments. But in the meantime, you need to be diversified, and the economy will come back. I think like a rocket. I agree with the president. But being diversified means Birch Gold. Also, Tony Fauci yesterday at the briefing on sneezing. This is crucial. Cut number 20.
What it was looking at the distance that droplets fly by speaking, by coughing, by sneezing. So if you go way back and go, achoo, and go like that, you might get 27 feet. But so when you see somebody do that, get out of the way.
There are some people
but that's not practical.
I know people that can do
that is not practical, John. I'm sorry, but I was disturbed by that report because that's misleading. That means that all of a sudden the 6-foot thing doesn't work. That is a very, very robust, vigorous achoo sneeze.
That is what 6 feet means. You don't have to worry if you're 6 feet away from people. It isn't going to get you. But, try and cop into your sleeve. I'll be right back. Admiral Stavridis on the situation on the TR when we return. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. A dire situation, or at least an extremely concerning situation, has arisen in the South Pacific at Guam, where the USS Teddy Roosevelt, one of our carriers, is in dock because more than 100 sailors have fallen ill. The captain of the carrier, Captain Bet Crozier, wrote to the Navy's Pacific Fleet that he needed a lot of help. Decisive action is required, removing the majority of personnel from a deployed U.S. nuclear aircraft carrier. Isolating for 2 weeks may seem like an extraordinary measure, but it's a necessary risk. I'm joined by Admiral James Stavridis, former commander of Southern Command, former commander of carriers, former Allied Supreme Commander. Admiral, we have a Navy story this morning. I'd like your reaction to what's going on there.
I think the captain, Hugh, has done exactly the right thing. And boy, that takes a lot of leadership in a very tight situation. I think unlike anything a captain has seen, certainly in modern times, he knew he could not continue on his current mission. He's got 5,000 sailors on that ship who you and I both know are packed together in berthing compartments. Think about your kitchen with 15 people living in it. That's kind of what it looks like. So there's no way to social distance. There's no way to do the kind of conventional things, and you can't even do what a cruise ship can, because a cruise ship has a cabin for everybody. On the Navy ships, these big berthing compartments, people are just packed in. So the captain had to go to his chain of command and ask to get all of those sailors off the ship. Now, that's extremely hard, because to do it right, you've got to get them ashore and get them into individual rooms, and they're on the relatively small island of Guam. Fortunately, Guam has a tourist industry. It has hotels, probably not very full right now, so I suspect the 90% of the crew, and Hugh, we're talking 4,500 sailors, are going to have to get off the ship, get into hotel rooms, weather this thing for 14 days, and the remaining 10% of the crew, say 500 sailors, are going to stand by on the ship because, newsflash, it's a nuclear aircraft carrier with nuclear reactors. It's loaded with missiles and bombs and high-performance aircraft. You can't just walk away and lock the door. So this is as difficult a situation as I've seen. We ought to all commend Captain Crozier for doing exactly the right thing, stepping away from the mission and saying the health of my sailors comes first, because we're not in a war right now. I'm going to do the right thing for my sailors.
Now, Admiral Stavridis, the chatter online yesterday was that Captain Crozier would be cashiered for going outside of the chain of command and leaking the letter. One, we don't know that he leaked the letter. Number two, I think that would be such blowback on Secretary Esper, and further down the line, the acting Secretary Modley and Sino Gide. I just don't think that's a wise idea. It would be devastating, I think, to morale. What is your thought on that?
It would be devastating, not just on morale, but to operational performance. Let's recall a couple of summers ago, the big Navy story, unfortunately, were two destroyers having collisions with merchants. We correctly cashiered the captains of those ships because they were performing incompetently. They didn't handle their ships well, drive their ships well. This is the opposite of that situation. This is a commanding officer who is exercising strong leadership, speaking truth to power. And by the way, personally, I don't know Captain Crozier, but I find it highly unlikely that a nuclear-trained Navy officer who is also a pilot, naval aviator, has to be to command that carrier. I don't see an individual like that leaking a letter. Somebody perhaps working for him did it. Someone perhaps above him in the chain of command leaked it. We'll never know, as usual with leaks. But in this case, I think he did, from all I can see, everything right. He should be anything but cashiered. His leadership ought to be commended.
Additional chatter yesterday about this situation is that once the virus runs through the crew, the TR will become the most valuable asset in the fleet. Expect a longer deployment. And number two, if you're in command, expect your command tours to be extended, because all of a sudden you've got an immune ship, a ship that can go anywhere at any time and be immune to this virus. Your thoughts on that speculation?
I think it is part of a larger picture we ought to mention here, which is that this is not going to be the only time this happens. The TR will not be the only ship that has virus run through it, because the conditions here are so positive for this virus. And by the way, it won't just be the Navy. We're going to see Air Force units that are packed in their fighter squadron bays in Europe. We're going to see this in a variety of different circumstances. The real nightmare, by the way, Hugh, would be for this to get into our nuclear strategic force and have a ballistic missile submarine have a similar challenge. And I think it's likely that we will probably see that going forward. So the whole Navy and all of the armed forces are going to have to stretch here, support the units that go down when they have to come offline. This is going to mean, for example, with TR, that another carrier or two are probably going to stay online at least an extra month. So there's going to be stretching the whole way. Bottom line, to your question, once it runs through the crew, yes, that will be a positive combat-ready ship, and that's a good thing. But unfortunately, I think we're going to see this scenario repeat itself, not only through the U.S. Navy, but through other elements of the armed forces as well. This will be a real challenge.
Now, we saw the Truman stay at sea for a long time last year. Do you expect the same thing to happen to the TR once it's recovered?
I do, unfortunately, and I think you're going to see a lot of Navy ships stay at sea because port visits are the way that the virus can get into a crew. Here, an important tactical plus is the rollout, evidently, of this so-called instant COVID-19 test, which can do a very light swab and tell within 15 or 20 minutes whether an individual has COVID-19. We need to get that out to the armed forces, especially forward deployed, as quickly as we possibly can, because that's how we would then be able to have crews come into port. Then you could check them as they came back from Liberty, cull out those who had caught the virus, isolate them, ship can go back to sea. Boy, until we have that kind of fast turnaround device out there, I think, yes, Navy ships are going to spend a lot of time at sea. By the way, the longest I ever spent at sea was about 200 days, and that felt like forever. That was 7 months at sea. But I think some of these ships are going to go longer than that before all's said and done.
We really need the antibody test so that we will know who has it and therefore has immunity to get to the fleet. Now, this is a tricky question, Admiral. It seems to me that we've got to bring the curtain down on military-related stories so that adversaries do not know anything about readiness. Agree or disagree?
I disagree. I think that's going to be, it would be one thing if we were involved in a war right now, in a global war. But I think given the circumstances of the moment, I don't think we want to pull that curtain completely closed. We've got families to inform. Let's face it, this is going to be part of how we deal with the virus globally, and we're not on a wartime footing. If this were World War II, I'd say absolutely correct. We're not quite at that stage yet, so I'm always one to be willing to have the Navy and the other services talk about what they're doing as openly as they can. In these circumstances, I think it's important, and I'll close, Hugh, by saying it's important for another reason, which is that I think the public, rightly, is expecting the U.S. military to step up and help the country fight the COVID virus. And we should and we will, and the beautiful hospital ship Mercy is in Los Angeles, and the Comfort is in New York right now, as sort of a down payment on the U.S. military's support to this fight against the COVID-19 virus. But the public needs to realize that our military, just like our police, just like our firemen, just like our doctors, just like our nurses, we're not bulletproof either. There are challenges we have to face in the military, and job one has got to be the health of the force, because that is how we maintain the security of the United States.
Last question, Admiral. We're out of time, but our mutual friend Captain Hendricks wrote in the public domain last week, expect a, quote, shoulder-to-shoulder incident. He was predicting China, PRC, and U.S. What we had was China and Japan, helicopter and destroyer, PRC helicopter, Japanese destroyer. What do you read into that incident? Do you agree with Captain Hendricks, also retired, that we've got to be very alert to the PRC pushing at this moment?
I do agree with Jerry Hendricks, and I've spoken a lot, and you and I have, about the South China Sea. We had to recognize there's something called the East China Sea, which is that between China and Japan. It is a very contentious area of the world. There are disputed islands there. The Senkakus, the Japanese call them, the Diaoyu, the Chinese call them. It is a hotspot like the South China Sea, and so that entire area is dangerous and volatile, and it would not surprise me to see China try to take advantage of this situation in some way.
Admiral James Stavridis, retired United States Navy. Thank you, Admiral. We'll talk again next week. We will see what is going on with the TR and the rest of the fleet. I'm loath to disagree with the Admiral, so I won't. I'll just not say anything. I'll just wait and see what happens. But we rarely do we disagree. But today, maybe a little bit. I might bring that curtain down. I know what I do agree on. I'm the CEO of a small foundation, the Nixon Foundation. We run blunt drives right now. We're closed. We're put in our application for the CARE relief package. But I want to join the JobCreatorsNetwork.com, and I want all of you to do it, because I'm going to talk to three senators today about Phase 4 if it comes. And the JobCreatorsNetwork.com will be out there getting your views known. Go and join it. They are helping you with tools. They represent you. Also want to tell you that I'm watching Battle of the Bulge. Telly Savalas, how did he ever become a famous actor? I don't know. He's a tanker in this thing. Henry Fonda, 1965. I'm going to go over to No Safe Spaces because NoSafeSpaces.com. Save 25 is the code. You'll get 25% off. You can watch the movie for 2 months. Dennis Prager, Adam Carolla. Makes you laugh, makes you cry. You're all streaming. Indeed, the internet, as the president said last night, you're going to experience interruptions all over the United States. Because the demand is so high because of streaming. No Safe Spaces worth the wait. I don't even think you have to wait. I think you just go and get it. It streams on some services very well. 25% off if you use SALE25 as your code. ReliefFactor.com and HonorBoundCoffee.com. Someone called Andrew and Todd yesterday and said, "What's that HonorBound Coffee?" Now, you're mixing up sponsors. ReliefFactor.com, if you're watching me on the camera right now, that's what I take right now. I ran 4 yesterday, walked 5 the day before. It's a walking day. I go back and forth between walking and running, and people can't tell the difference. I'm so slow, but ReliefFactor.com, down the hatch with Icarian, Curcumin, resveratrol, and Omega. Take it every day. Stay in the game. A lot of you forgot to do it. I talked to Pete and Seth. You're back on the program. Good for you. You got to stay in shape. You got to, in fact, use April. April is the cruelest month. Lawrence Tribe just tweeted out. He's right, and this is the cruelest month of cruelest month. But you can use these 30 days, if you stay 6 feet away from people, to walk and run and get into shape. ReliefFactor.com will provide support for the temporary relief and the minor aches and pains that accompany this. And then do not forget, HonorBoundCoffee.com. 100% of the profits of every cup of coffee you drink go to support the troops. HonorBoundCoffee.com. Dan Sullivan next. Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio, joined now by United States Senator Dan Sullivan. Good morning, Senator Sullivan. How goes things in Alaska with the Sullivan family and your state?
Good morning, Hugh. Alaskans are tough. We're resilient people, but we're fighting it like everybody else. As I keep saying to my constituents, everybody has a role to play. What we say in the Marine Corps, one team, one fight. That's what we're doing in Alaska. But, like the rest of the country, proud of our citizens. 2,500 Alaskans across state already committed to sewing masks. But we got a long haul to go, but we'll get through it stronger and tougher and more resilient.
So I want to ask the questions I asked of Leader McConnell first. There's a debate about what ifs. Do you believe, Senator Sullivan, that impeachment impacted our readiness to deal with COVID?
Yes. I mean, look, impeachment, if you look at the month of January, the entire federal government, the House, the Senate, and the executive branch were focused on impeachment. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Hugh, I think we're going to look back in this period and kind of say, it all seems so ridiculous what was going on then. And, I was in discussions on the margins during impeachment, literally when we were taking breaks, starting to talk about this. You mentioned Senator Cotton, raising the alarm. He and I had a number of conversations about it. But the fact is, it was all impeachment all the time in January. And there's no doubt that, in my mind, that it took our eye off the ball on this big issue. Like I said, history will look back and say, wow, that was really ridiculous now that we have the threat of hundreds of thousands of Americans dying.
Now, I also want to get to Phase 4 and what the Senate has done. I think it was Senator McConnell's finest hour to shepherd through Phase 3. But before we go to Phase 4, I know the president is considering the moral equivalent of war bonds, pandemic bonds, so that the average American citizen, like in World War II and I, can contribute to public health infrastructure. What do you think of that?
I like it, and I've talked to some of my colleagues already. And we need to implement Phase 3, as you mentioned. But I do think that we need to start thinking hard about Phase 4. I think it would be a mistake to give the Speaker the pen. One of the things that you mentioned about Leader McConnell, the reason Phase 3, which certainly wasn't perfect, came out well is that it started in the Senate. We need to be ready to start Phase 4 in the Senate, and I think we can do that, and I think it's a mistake to give her the pen.
So how would you, they use a task force system in the Senate, the leader put it together. You're on armed services, you're on commerce and science. In Phase 3, there was not any expenditure on the strategic weaponry that stands up against the originator of this virus, the Communist Chinese Party. The CCP is responsible for this because they shut down communication. In Phase 4, ought we to fund our strategic deterrent in a significant way?
Yes, and let me just give you a couple ideas that I think that could be the basis of a bipartisan bill. I've already talked to some senators on both sides of the aisle. For Phase 4, first we got to fix the problems in Phase 3. We know there are going to be mistakes. It was a rushed bill, important to get it out there, but there's going to be mistakes. There are going to be people who aren't going to be covered. Next is infrastructure. The president and I had a good conversation about this the other day. Out of the Environment and Public Works Committee, I sit on that committee. We passed the next 5-year highway bill 21-0. Very bipartisan already for infrastructure. That's a big infrastructure bill already. This idea of bringing key manufacturing and supply chains home, particularly from China, a lot of bipartisan support for that. Your idea, Hugh, on war bonds, virus bonds, and we're already working on the National Defense Authorization Act right now. That, to me, is a bipartisan package that for Phase 4, Phase 3 is a tourniquet for our economy. Phase 4 should help turbocharge a recovery. The elements I just mentioned there would have strong bipartisan support in the Senate, and I think we need to get on it.
Can we forward appropriate acquisition costs for, say, the entire Columbia-class submarine, the entire B-21? These are strategic systems that deter the People's Republic of China from ever going from adversary to enemy. Can we forward appropriate the monies necessary for those systems?
So if you look at where we've been just in the last couple of years, one of the areas of bipartisan support that doesn't get a lot of press is the recognition in the national defense strategies and national security strategy by the Trump administration that we need to move to great power competition with China as the pacing threat for our nation. The vast majority of all U.S. senators agree with that, and that's why the NDAA, the Defense Authorization Act, and the funding for our military, after Obama cut it by 25% in his second term, has returned in a strong bipartisan way. So I think there are ways to continue strong bipartisan support for rebuilding our military. Now more than ever, if you look at the last three NDAAs, they passed with like 85 senators voting for them.
Senator Dan Sullivan, good to hear you're in good health. I hope and pray the whole Sullivan family and all of Alaska weathers this. Keep talking to us about this. Phase 4 drafting, I agree. Let's get it started in the Senate, which makes a lot more sense than the ideologically broken House. Don't go anywhere, America. Hour number 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show, straight ahead.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Welcome back, America. Morning glory, bonjour, hi. It's Hugh Hewitt talking to 400-plus affiliates, including our new one in Bristol and Jonesboro and all along the border in Tennessee on 92.9. Welcome in Virginia and Tennessee. My guest this morning to start the second hour of Pennsylvania's Attorney General Josh Shapiro. You should know Josh Shapiro is a Democrat. I like him anyway. He's one of those old-fashioned Democrats who I get along with. Good morning, Mr. Attorney General. How are you?
Hey, Hugh, good morning. I get along with you, too, so how about that?
That's great. Now, let me ask you the first question. How is the Shapiro family and your extended family? Everybody healthy?
Thanks for asking. We're okay. You know, we've got 4 school-age kids. My wife and I are home with them. We're hunkered down, and, you know, we're some of the blessed people. The kids have computers to do online learning. We've got food. Most importantly, we're healthy, and we're hanging in. So I appreciate you asking. I hope the Hewitt clan is doing all right as well. We appreciate particularly your kids' service. It really matters to us. Thank you.
Now, I want to thank you. I want to look at every attorney general is the same. I had David Yost on, a Republican, and they were battling to get an FDA approval for one of their companies. So there are 3 categories. Is the federal government helping you? Number 2, what's going on with your efforts against hoarders and price gouging? And number 3, there are lots of states attorney general going after big tech. I think we need a truce in that war from the feds and the state until we're done with this. I'll let you take those in the order that you want. Federal government action, hoarding and price gouging, and truce for tech.
I would say the federal government has been accessible. I've been on numerous calls. In particular, the Surgeon General and I have gone back and forth on an issue of testing. I tend to believe we need to do more testing than he does. We've had an area of disagreement there, but it's been respectful, and they've been accessible. And, you know, based on my conversations, which have been extensive with our governor, we seem to be getting the resources that he's asking for. So on point number 1, obviously we've got many miles still to travel, but I think that is going okay. On price gouging, look, as soon as the governor issued his declaration here in Pennsylvania, I immediately set up a special price gouging hotline, price gouging at Attorney General Pennsylvania. Hugh, we've received 3,165 total price gouging complaints.
Wow.
We followed up on each and every one of them. I got a store in Philly selling masks for $49.99. They're typically less than $5. I got a drugstore in Harrisburg selling a small package of toilet paper for $21.99. Listen, you cannot take advantage of a Pennsylvanian during this crisis. We got to pull together. We got to look out for one another. Now, on the third point you raised on price gouging, look, I think there's a lot of questions about, you know, as you call it, big tech that need to be addressed later on. Here's one that can't wait. I led a multi-state action calling on Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Walmart, and Craigslist to use the technology they already have to more rigorously monitor online price gouging. Because what they're doing now is they're basically playing whack-a-mole, right? With the gazillions of products they're selling, they have, you know, they get a complaint, they look into it, they take the product off their marketplace. That's fine, but we need them to use their online tools and the technology and all the data they collect on us when we shop for things and use that to stop the price gouging from occurring in the first place. The good news is this was a bipartisan coalition of attorneys general that I led, 33 in total, and we are hearing from these platforms that they agree they need to take more steps, and they're working constructively with us. So I hope
let's expand on that for a minute, Attorney General Shapiro. The big tech industry is under the constant surveillance of the Federal Trade Commission, the United States Department of Justice, and 50 state attorneys general, and that's good. I have pushed for that. I want them to cooperate without fear of antitrust action being brought by state officials or federal officials for a period of time certain. You know, if they want to cooperate to stop price gouging, they got to look over their shoulder to make sure they're not engaging in anti-competitive conduct. Do they need those assurances?
No, because what we're asking them to do, they should be doing it anyway, and I don't think raises antitrust issues. Look, we're asking them to do 3 things. Use their technology to prevent exorbitant price increases from occurring in the first place, not chase them after. Number 2, trigger price gouging protections so that they're using their technology to scan these prices and see when something goes above a certain threshold. And number 3, implement a complaint portal where people can more easily and accessibly let folks know that they see price gouging like they're doing here in Pennsylvania by just simply emailing us at a dedicated address. These are things they should all be doing. I don't think there's antitrust issues, and I don't think that these things can wait until after this crisis has subsided. These are changes they can make and should make right now, and the good news is they're being responsive to our demands.
Now, General, 37 years ago, Professor Kuiper at the University of Michigan Law School, that may be the only thing I remember from antitrust. If you hear companies get together and you're in the room and they're talking about cooperating, knock over the carafe of water, get it on yourself, and leave so everyone remembers you leaving the moment at which they breach the antitrust laws. I want Amazon to call eBay and get together on figuring out how to stop price fixing first. I also want them to get together to figure out how, with everyone else, Apple and Google, to share testing data. But I don't want their lawyers knocking the carafe over because they had the same lecture from Kuiper. What do we do about that?
Yeah, but listen, here's what we're asking to do. How many times have you gone on Amazon and it seems like they already know what you want to buy?
Oh, my gosh.
When you start typing a few things in, right? They have massive,
yes.
Right, Hugh? I mean, they've got massive amounts of data on you. They've got massive amounts of data on purchasers like you. I want them to use that not just to sell Hugh Hewitt a product, but to make sure Hugh Hewitt is protected when he buys that product by constantly scanning for pricing differences and irregularities, and by shutting down those online merchants who are using their marketplace to distribute products to you in ways that aren't price gouging you. I think you can do that pretty simply without violating our antitrust laws, and you can do it in a way where you're streamlining that process across the board, again, without running afoul of our antitrust laws.
Okay, the one thing I'd ask, I think if they get the perfect algorithm, I want them to share it with Google and everybody else and not get sued. Let me ask you about the last question, the most sensitive one. Governor Larry Hogan said he is preparing for civil unrest should it occur in the event of shortages in urban areas or suburban areas or even rural areas. Are you?
We are. We've taken significant steps with our law enforcement partners across Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I hope it doesn't come to that. But look, as the president said yesterday, we got to settle in for what's going to be a rough couple of weeks, this is obviously going to go on much longer. And we need to make sure that the supply chains are open to be able to get food to people. We're seeing huge lines in Pittsburgh just to line up at the food bank to get food. So many people are struggling. Hugh, we've had 850,000 Pennsylvanians apply for uninsurance, or to apply, for unemployment. We are in a challenging situation fiscally and obviously from a public health standpoint, and that has to include mental health as well. There's a lot of concern I have, but we are effectively coordinating with our law enforcement partners at the federal, state, and local level to prepare for things in the future should they take that turn. I'm still hopeful and believe in the best of Pennsylvanians, that we're going to look out for one another, that we're going to be there for one another, and that it won't come to that. But I can tell you that as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we are certainly preparing for that.
Oh, okay, I have time for one more. Detective Tom called me from Oakland on Monday. Good regular caller. He's the real deal. He's actually a detective on the streets. Says the cartels are using this as a business opportunity, that this is a space for them to import and store product, set up distribution networks, and in every way strengthen their infrastructure for distribution of fentanyl and other killer substances in the United States. Have you seen that, Attorney General Shapiro?
Well, sadly, we still continue to see 12 Pennsylvanians die every single day from the heroin, fentanyl, and opioid crisis, and we see drug dealers trying to take advantage of this situation. Let me tell you something. I haven't forgotten about my day job amidst this crisis, and public safety is my top priority and at the core of everything we do. And we may have some people working remotely now and not showing up in the physical office space every day, but we still have agents working drug cases. We're still tracking, crime guns. We're still working hard to keep our neighborhoods safe. So criminals need to be on notice here in Pennsylvania and I think across the country based upon my collaboration with our federal partners, that this isn't a time to pull something. This isn't a time to mess around. This isn't a time to try and take advantage of people because we're watching. We're still making arrests. We're still working these big cases. We're still listening to them on wiretaps, and we're still going to hunt them down and hold them accountable for claiming the lives of Pennsylvanians.
Attorney General of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, thank you. Attorney General, keep coming back. I love talking to Democrats. Shared common goals at a time of a common crisis. I'll be right back, America. Go nowhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt on the first day of April. Be very aware of April Fool jokes. People are, even though it's the age of the virus, some people fall for it. The gullible people out there fall for it. And I'm not doing any April Fool's jokes. Most famous one in the history of the show is when I told people I was going to become Senator McCain's press secretary. And many of you called me and told me don't do it. It was during the 2008 campaign after he'd won the nomination. That was good. But not this year. This year, I want you to listen very closely. And in fact, go to my YouTube channel because you can watch this video as well. If you go to YouTube and type in Hugh Hewitt, if you're watching on live stream on HughHewitt.com, if you're in the universe, watch or listen to this video.
We have an important message for all of you, especially if you live in a country that is right now facing the new coronavirus. The pandemic is growing exponentially in many countries. But the Czech Republic is one of the few in Europe that has significantly slowed down the spread of the virus. In this video, we would like to tell you what we did differently, and mainly, we would like to help you to do the same. We are following social distancing and the rule stay at home. But others do that too. We also have strict hygienic procedures. Others do that as well. But the main difference is everyone who has to leave their house has to wear a face mask. Everyone.
I know. They may be told you that masks wouldn't protect you, but there are studies proving that even a homemade mask can be partially protective. Partially. Any protection is essential today. But now the more important thing. Masks fundamentally prevent the transmission from you to others by sneezing, coughing, but also breathing. And many people are the most contagious before they start showing symptoms. So, when we both have a face mask, I protect you, you protect me, and we are both safe.
Based on recent data, we know that population-wide use of masks is essential for suppression of the outbreak.
According to our professional experience, a simple homemade mask can prevent up to 100% of the spread of potentially infected microdroplets.
The more people use masks, the less virus can be distributed and fewer individuals are exposed.
Just a few days ago, people were laughing at those who wore masks. But some people knew about this positive effect and started to share this information across social media. The message grew fast through artists, influencers, and others. I know, face masks aren't in stores, right? But something incredible happened. People started making homemade masks and giving them to others for free. Many companies, theaters, or even retirement houses changed their buildings into sewing rooms, and thousands of people started to sew masks at home. So we know that face masks work, and it has been repeatedly confirmed by scientists. We know that it is possible in just 3 days to provide face masks for 10 million people in one country. And we know that here we have fundamentally repressed the infection. Please share this knowledge and help us to change as many countries as possible. Take a picture with your face mask on and share it with the hashtag #MasksForAll. It can really save lives. And remember, I protect you, you protect me.
I do not know where that came from. I know that it's persuasive. And the president last night said even a scarf will help. Now, I have allergies. You may hear it in my voice. It's April is the cruelest month for allergies, and I'm out every day, socially distancing, running or walking. So I'm going to start doing that. It's just going to have to happen. It's just going to have to happen. I'll come back and tell you about andrewandtodd.com in a moment, give you some market insight, as well as talk with Tom Holland. Well, let's talk to Tom Holland first when we return to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by No Safe Spaces.
Welcome back. I am Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. I want to play for you Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, is what the president calls him. He caught such heat from the left wing because of his statement in the Rose Garden 2 days ago that I'll bet you thousands of you are going to mypillow.com and ordering all sorts of product. Use my code when you do it. He's a sponsor of the show and has been for years. HUGH, Hugh, you'll get the best price on all that stuff. But people are just rallying to Mike Lindell because the left-wing nutters in this country savaged him for speaking gospel truth and for praising the president. And he is I just played that Masks for All video. He's got one half of his capacity producing masks. God bless Mike Lindell. Go to mypillow.com, buy whatever you need for sheets, etc. Meanwhile, Mike Lindell went on Newsmax with our friend Sean Spicer yesterday and said this number 17.
Well, it just proves once again what kind of like Jim Acosta came out and attacked me, and he was there 3 feet over from there, or actually about 10 feet over. I want to say they had us spread out. And I'm looking, I've never met the man. I'm here to help. I want to help the country, and I just put a message out of hope. People are looking for hope, and God is that hope. And it's like, how sad that these people are doing this. These are good people if you talk about the political left, this is just the media. This is the media on the left. And you know what? The public's getting on to that because they see our great president. They see now what he's doing, and they're not gonna listen to the media anymore. These are good people. This isn't about politics. This is about uniting us as a country against this horrible, invisible war we're fighting.
Now, Mike Lindell is speaking directly to you and to me and to everybody. Support him. Go to mypillow.com. Just support him. I mean, I do believe Mike is onto something. I believe media credibility is crashing in the country, except for people like me, Mike Gallagher, Dennis Prager, Seb Gorka, Larry Elder, our local affiliates, people that you trust to give you assurance that we'll be here tomorrow and the country will be fine. I already told you that on the average year in America, 2.8 million people die, and we were going to have a 10% to 100% increase in that. I think Team Trump is keeping that down at the 10% level. It is clear to me there was no stopping this virus from going around the world now. I was first to the bell all January telling you about this. Tom Cotton was first to the bell. There's just no stopping it. It's returning now in a second phase of the first wave. But we still have a lot of hope because America has a hell of a kick, like Eric Lindell in Chariots of Fire. Fell down, still won the race. Go watch the movie. President Trump had a good exchange with Jim Acosta yesterday in the White House about this. Cut number 18.
Comments about what could have happened and the actions that you took. Is there any fairness to the criticism that you may have lulled Americans into a false sense of security when you were saying things like it's going to go away?
Well, it is.
And that sort of thing. But
Jim, it's going away.
But when you were saying
it's going to go away, hopefully at the end of the month, and if not, it hopefully will be soon after that.
But hasn't your thinking on this evolved?
Jim, it is going away.
Hasn't your thinking on this evolved? You're taking it more seriously now.
I think from the beginning, my attitude was that we have to give this country. I know how bad it was. All you have to do is look at what was going on in China. It was devastation. And look at the numbers from China, those initial numbers coming out from China. But, I read an article today, which was very interesting. They say, we wish President Trump would give more bad news. Give bad news. I'm not about bad news. I want to give people hope. I want to give people a feeling that we all have a chance. I mean, when you saw the numbers, and when John and all of you saw those numbers, and you're saying 120,000 people, you mean that's good? 100,000 dead people within a short period of time. I want to give people a feeling of hope.
He went on about that feeling of hope. Cut number 19.
This would disappear.
I want to be positive. I don't want to be negative. I'm a positive person. Somebody said, I wish it'd be more negative. They literally have that. It's in one of the wonderful newspapers today. I wish it'd be more negative. Well, this is really easy to be negative about. But I want to give people hope, too. I'm a cheerleader for the country. We're going through the worst thing that the country's probably ever seen. Look, we had the Civil War. We lost 600,000 people, right? Here's the thing, had we not done anything, we would have lost many times that. But we did something, and so it's going to be hopefully way under that. But, you know, we lose more here potentially than you lose in world wars as a country. So there's nothing positive, there's nothing great about it, but I want to give people in this country hope. I think it's very important.
Be this severe when
when he said the word cheerleader, my little memory bank kicked in. On June 22nd, 2015, the president told me he wants to be a cheerleader. When he was then candidate Trump, he hadn't even declared, hadn't come down the escalator yet. I want to be a cheerleader. President Reagan was a cheerleader. I believe the president needs to be a cheerleader. And I think he's right. He's never been more right. You got to say, we're making progress, we're doing great stuff. And then Dr. Birx got up and basically said to Jim Acosta and the whole White House press corps, you people do not understand the science here. You can't stop what you cannot detect. We don't know if the virus was here in January. We do know impeachment was diverting our attention. We'll talk some more about that after the break with Representative Gallagher and Senator Roy Blunt and Senator Ted Cruz. But the president is right. Now, we're going to have bad news on the markets today. This is brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are making loans. There was Sierra Pacific Mortgage. If you need a refinance, their markets have stabilized. They're now locking down a few rates. They're just saying, get your paperwork into the pipeline, get ready to go. Be ready to lock for whatever you want, a 15-year refinance, a 30-year purchase, whatever it is you want. Go to AndrewandTodd.com, fill out a couple of questions. They've been online and remote for years. They're so set up. Best place in the world to go. The young couple I know in D.C. that used Andrew and Todd and Gordon Wood, their realtor in Alexandria, closed yesterday. So you're still buying houses all across the country, even in New York, even in L.A., even in San Francisco, even in Seattle. People are buying houses. AndrewandTodd.com. Ask them what you need. You might need to refinance. Go there, 888-888-1172. But you're going to see some bad news around the world today. This is the pre-market report. It's the world market report. Japan closed down 4.5%. Hong Kong down 2.25%. England is down at this hour almost 4%. Germany the same. I don't know what American markets will do by the end of the day. What they do in the beginning of the day, what they do at 1 o'clock is what they were up at 1 o'clock Eastern time yesterday and they closed down. Not because of the president's press conference, but because coronavirus cases returned to Asia. So the second phase of the first wave is out there. That's why masks for all, hashtag masks for all, makes sense. Everything counts until we get the antibody test, a vaccine, and effective therapeutics which are being developed. Everything counts. Every mitigation matters. But I'm not counting American markets out. I just believe the 10-year Treasury at 0.7% means great rates for those of you who need to refinance. Head over to AndrewandTodd.com. I need my small businesses to go to JobCreatorsNetwork.com. JobCreatorsNetwork.com. Share your stories. Get them lined up for Phase 4. I'll be talking with Senators Blunt and Cruz and Congressman Gallagher after the break about that. Also, head over to NoSafeSpaces.com. Look, the internet is fitzy all over the country, but streaming is under great stress. What's not under great stress is NoSafeSpaces.com, and indeed, you're getting 25% off when you use the code SAVE25. SAVE25 with my buddy Prager and Adam Carolla. The unlikeliest tag team. They ought to be professional wrestlers. Don't you think Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla ought to do professional wrestling? I do. But you can see them together at No Safe Spaces. Let me also remind you about this. If you're watching on HughHewitt.com, ReliefFactor.com, take it every day. I did in the first hour. I remind you about it 2 more times. A lot of you are doing socially acceptable, physically distant walking and running. Good. Wear a face mask. But take your Relief Factor, because you're going to use muscle groups you have never used before, and you knew the Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega, 4 natural supplements. The only supplement I take, can't tell you how many people pitch me about new supplements, and there are good ones out there. But all I take are what my doctor tells me to take and Relief Factor. Oh, I take a multivitamin. I got to be honest with you. I'm always on it. I take a multivitamin. But I take ReliefFactor.com, $19.95. I also If you're watching me, I'm bending over here in the studio to pick up my honor-bound coffee. Honorboundcoffee.com. Someone called up andrewandtodd.com yesterday and said, how do I get the coffee? Those are different sponsors. I know I give you a lot of sponsors, but you folks are listening to radio. You're binge listening because you can trust me. I love that. Trust me on this. A lot of people are going to be away from home for a long time. As Admiral Stavridis said in the first hour, once we get a ship clear to the virus, the antibodies and all the crew, they're going to be at sea a long time. Commands are going to be extended. Sailors' tours are going to be extended. Air Force pilots are going to be extended. And those military families are going to be under stress. Honorboundcoffee.com. If you subscribe, every dollar of profit made by honorboundcoffee.com goes to, right now, Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, longtime friends of the show. Twice a year I do a fundraiser for them because they're just so good, and they serve every branch. They have America's Fund, they have the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, they take care of wounded warriors and their families, and the military YMCA, which is on almost every base. I can't say every base. There are little observation posts, command outposts out there. Jake Tapper's wonderful book about command outposts. Kidding, there was no Y there. But on every big base, there's a YMCA for the kids of the base. And it's run by the military Y. And honorboundcoffee.com, I'm going to work with them as well. Honorboundcoffee.com. If you are drinking coffee like I am, that isn't lukewarm. That is stone freaking cold coffee. But I drink it because Generalissimo doesn't help me. It's all his fault. I got to tell you, I carried out an April Fool's joke today. I'm very, very, very proud of myself. But I'm not doing it on the air. Just get your guard up. Don't do it. Do not do it on the air. I do want to I got a great sponsor, PolicyGenius.com. Great sponsor. And I don't owe them this piece, but I think people are beginning to think about life insurance like they've never thought about life insurance. You should have thought about life insurance a long time ago. If you're going to go shopping for life insurance, and you should, because you're going to be fine. 100 to 250,000 of you are not. You're going to die. But you're going to likely be older. And you're going to be likely, like me, have asthma or something else. If you're a young person, please go to PolicyGenius.com and protect your family. They can save you up to $1,500 by shopping. You don't need to, in any way, shape, or form, panic. You don't need to be worried about this virus if you're taking good physical distancing steps and you're wearing the mask and you're social distancing. If you're 40 years old, you're 35 years old, your risk is very low. Not insignificant, but very low. I want the country to be prepared for the next wave, the next pandemic, and I want you to be prepared about getting hit by a car or an anvil falling on your head. PolicyGenius.com. Please trust me on this. I'd save you up to $1,500 on insurance. Nobody likes to talk about life insurance, so do it online. It's one of the, you're at home, right? What are you doing? Check on your mortgage with andrewandtodd.com. Get your coffee from Honorbound Coffee, and then get PolicyGenius.com. Mike Gallagher, Congressman Extraordinaire, joins me next for an update on the CCP. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
insurance. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined by Congressman Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin's 8th Congressional District, good friend of the program. Follow him at Rep. Gallagher. Congressman, the head of all programming for Salem and I, Phil Boyce and I, were talking offline. It seems to us that the WHO is not credible anymore. It seems to us that they botched the beginning of this because they trusted the PRC and they refused to call the PRC to account for political reasons. Are Phil and I correct?
You are 100% correct about that. And for evidence, I would look no further than the interview that the WHO official who made a trip to China and came back in February gave recently, Dr. Bruce Aylward. He said, effectively, if I had COVID-19, I want to be treated in China. He was effusive in his praise for China. And when asked in a subsequent interview about Taiwan's response to coronavirus, he pretended not to hear the question and then hung up on the interviewer. When she called back and asked the question again about Taiwan, Dr. Aylward said, well, we've already talked about China, thereby unsubtly suggesting that Taiwan belongs to China. You know, we've seen similar things happen. Johns Hopkins University maintains a coronavirus tracker, an interactive map at their coronavirus resource center. And at some point between early February and mid-March, the map's label of Taiwan changed from Taiwan to Taipei and its environs. A sort of Orwellian way of suggesting similarly that Taiwan belongs to China. They have now gone back and forth on whether they're going to change that. But this is why I was glad to see that Secretary Pompeo is going to support Taiwan's bid for WHO observer status. And I have a theory that perhaps, as we've talked about before, the most important variable that explains why certain countries have been successful in combating coronavirus is whether or not they experienced the SARS crisis firsthand. But similarly, I think Taiwan benefited from its long history in dealing with the lies of the Chinese Communist Party and perhaps distrusting the data that was coming from Beijing early on, and thereby being able to ready itself comparatively for weathering this crisis.
Well, I do want people to take to heart that the PRC has an undue influence on the WHO, which we will have to correct after this is over. Second question, Congressman Gallagher, #masks, the number 4 all is trending. That's because people are beginning to figure out, you know what? It can't hurt. What's your opinion?
I think obviously it can't hurt. Here again, I think the WHO has been completely deficient, if not criminally incompetent. The WHO is where the initial guidance, as I understand it, came down saying don't wear masks. Now, I don't know if this is just all part of an effort to prevent hoarding of masks, a run on masks, so that people on the front lines, hospital workers and first responders could get them. But to me, it seems the most obvious thing that masks would work, at least marginally, to slow the spread of the virus. And it seems we're now changing course, but you have to look back and think about how much time we lost as a result of bad guidance we got early on. I also have to believe, just given the manufacturing power we still have in this country, that we can rapidly start producing at least the basic surgical masks, if not the more advanced N95 masks that we need. I have a ton of companies in Northeast Wisconsin that are manufacturers that are trying to do this right now. They're still trying to navigate some of the regulations. They don't want to be held liable for various things, whether it's copyright infringement or otherwise. But I'm sensing a real sort of bottom-up movement here within our manufacturing community in the Midwest to try and produce a lot of things where we've become dangerously dependent on China and other foreign manufacturers.
Last question, Congressman. We have got a phase 4 underway by Speaker Pelosi. Leader McConnell said not yet on the show yesterday. Senator Sullivan said let's get going because we can't trust the House. Have you been consulted on phase 4? And if there is a phase 4, will it finally include some funding for our strategic deterrent vis-a-vis the PRC?
Well, how dare my fellow Marine, Senator Sullivan, insult the House like that? Has no decency. What worries me about this 4.0, as it relates to the details I've heard so far that have been leaked, it seems Pelosi is doing a more aggressive version of what she tried to do with 3.0, which is to say stuff it with a progressive wish list. I know it feels like a lifetime ago, but just last week she rolled out her version of the 3.0 package, and it was chock full of special interest giveaways. Now, I'm glad that McConnell largely held the line and prevented that, although Pelosi did waste about 3 days of all of our time in getting 3.0 passed. But if 4.0 similarly has a progressive wish list attached to it and items that have nothing to do with the virus itself, I think it will dramatically slow it down. Now, I do think there has to be defense money included, because look at what's happening right now with the USS Teddy Roosevelt, for example, and the USS Ronald Reagan. I mean, you had a really unprecedented letter coming from the commanding officer of the Roosevelt, basically desperate for help, because both the Navy and Guam authorities were taking way too long to unload positive cases from a ship. So the Navy's going to need some help, and we need to maintain our deterrent posture in Indo-PACOM relative to the PRC.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, from your lips to Speaker Pelosi's ears. I will be back. Hour number 3 is Straight Ahead America. Missouri Senator Roy Blunt, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and much, much more. The news you need, the analysis you must have in this age of the virus. Tell everyone about the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by No Safe Spaces.
Morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to everyone across a beleaguered world where we approach 1 million coronavirus cases. There are 872,000 diagnosed, but it will cross 1 million soon. 43,200 are known dead, and it's going to be higher than that. It's like the 1918 pandemic. The numbers will never record what it actually is. I'm joined to begin this hour by Senator Roy Blunt of the great state of Missouri. Senator Blunt, how are you?
You know, I'm good, Hugh, and it's good to be with you, and thanks for what you're doing to talk about what's going on in our country and the challenge we face right now.
You know, I've got to ask you a question unrelated to COVID, just because it occurred to me. I am watching season 3 of Ozark as part of my stay-at-home campaign, and it's a fascinating series. I wonder if people in Missouri like it or don't like it.
I don't like it. It's a little dark for me, and I don't think it's a true reflection of anything that happens at the Lake of the Ozarks, or at least not much of what happens at the Lake of the Ozarks. But I think
that's what I thought.
It's even filmed in Georgia, so there, I believe.
Well, you've got your Georgia Republican colleagues who probably like it a lot. Let's get to the serious stuff. There's a debate over whether or not impeachment impacted our readiness. The leader was on with me yesterday. He said, of course it did. The president last night said, of course it did. What do you say, Senator Blunt?
Well, I think there's no question. It was a huge distraction. It was the House had not made the case. They came to the Senate and presented the same 40 minutes of information about 40 times in the time they were there, and there was no way it didn't take everybody's attention off everything else that was going on in the world to some extent. Now, it doesn't mean we weren't paying any attention to what was happening in China or places, but there's no doubt it was a huge distraction. It's interesting how quickly it's moved from the American mind. One, we have a real serious problem now, and two, there was just no there, and the more you watch the House presentation, the more you realized that they were not close to making the case that took either the time or the attention that they had focused on this.
We don't know what would have happened had it not happened. I just point out it's one of those variables about which people should be aware. Now, Speaker Pelosi is out saying that the president is responsible for deaths. And I think of the 3 weeks that she sat on, I think it was 3 weeks she sat on the articles. Did she not?
She did. I think it was about 3 weeks' time from the time that the House passed the articles. I never thought actually the Speaker had the legal ability to hold those articles back. I think, one, this is a totally focusing moment for the Senate once the House does it, and two, we need to move on. If this is a serious problem, it needs to be dealt with in a serious way, and I think trying to hold those articles and effectively holding those articles indicated that this was never a crisis moment where a president of the United States should have been impeached or been removed. And the Speaker knew that, and every one of the House presenters knew that, and it didn't take long before the American people figured that out.
Well, I'm being criticized by some of the left-wing nutters over at Media Matters. Emo, I call him or her, who listens to the show, and they say I'm buying into the idea that impeachment impacted preparedness. And, of course, on this show I was talking about the pandemic from January forward. It had to as a matter of the Constitution, because when articles are received by the Senate, you must go into session and you must attend. There's simply, it just as a matter of physical time, your time was obligatory as a matter of what you did. It was obliged to be on impeachment. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct, and we have to be there. We have to spend the time on this. It gets in the way of every other thing you would normally be focusing on. In fact, this was a point I tried to make a number of times during and after the impeachment trial. It's critically important that the House make the case if they're going to impeach a president. Critically important they totally make the case, because the House has all the time they need. They can go to court. They can take weeks, they can take months, they can investigate. But once the Senate gets the case, just by practicality, reality, and the Constitution, it becomes our total focus legislatively. We have no other focus legislatively. And that's why it was a good thing we didn't fall for the House ploy that we've sort of put this together. It's sort of the two weakest articles of impeachment you could possibly send over, but now the Senate's job is to make something out of this. That is absolutely not the Senate's job. And probably the smartest thing the Senate did at this process is not take that bait, is to say to future houses and this House, if you're going to impeach the president, you have the case totally made. You are the one that needs to go to court. You're the one that needs to challenge executive privilege. All that has to happen before you send it to the Senate, because once the Senate gets it, we don't have months to deal with it like the House does. We don't have weeks to go to court like the House would have to go to court. And it was a poor plan, poorly executed, unless the plan was just to convince the American people that there was something there that wasn't there. And it had to be distracting. And anybody who says it wasn't distracting should go back and look at what they were talking about and what they were focused on the entire month of January. And I guarantee you it wasn't what was going on in China.
Let me turn to the future, Senator Blunt. In the Washington Post, I wrote about an idea that the president is considering, and I hope he goes with it, pandemic bonds, the moral equivalent of war bonds, like we did in World War II and World War I. Now, interest rates are very low, but they could even be negative interest rates. American citizens want to help. What do you think about pandemic bonds?
Well, they do want to help, and something that would create a long-term way for us to fund the amount of money that we're trying to use to both fight the virus and stabilize the economy would be a good thing. It's unreasonable to assume that the federal government can just totally absorb with no impact $2.2 trillion and counting moving forward. So something like that issue would be a good idea, I think. I think people do want to help. Frankly, interest rates are low, but they're not nearly as low as they are lots of places in Europe now. Investing in that bond might actually turn out to be, in the long term, both the best thing for your country and not a bad thing for the people that would decide to invest. I think we ought to consider all the alternatives, and we ought to be sure as we move forward with this that our future actions are as focused as they possibly can be on what we need to do here, not some other agenda that the speaker or anybody else wants to advance and use this as the hostage to advance that other agenda. What we need to do, figure out the best we can how to pay for what we need to pay for, but understand there's a two-front war here, and one front is the virus itself, and the other front is trying to stabilize what in February was the strongest economy in anybody's memory.
I do believe that America would step forward as one to buy pandemic bonds, as they did in World War II. 89 million Americans bought $185 billion worth of bonds during the course of World War II, which is about $2.6 trillion in real terms now. I think America would do that. Let me ask you about Phase 4. The leader didn't want to do it. Nancy Pelosi's going forward. Dan Sullivan, your colleague, said we better produce our own just to be ready rather than get rolled by her. What do you think? We got about a minute, Senator Blunt.
Well, I think Phase 4 needs to, first of all, be focused on what we find are the shortcomings in Phase 3. There had to be some. There was no way we could put a package together that quickly, though we needed to put it together that quickly, and have not left some gaps, and we need to fill those gaps. That needs to be our first focus. And frankly, let's let things move on for a little while and see what we need to do next. But job one is to clean up what we did in Phase 3, and we understood during Phase 3 that there'd be some gaps that need to be filled, and we need to fill those gaps.
Senator Roy Blunt, always a pleasure. Good luck keeping yourself, your family, and your state and the country safe. I appreciate your joining me today. I want to tell everyone out there as well, jobcreatorsnetwork.com. This Phase 4 is coming. If you're a small business, go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com and talk to them about your story. Do that. Do that. Also want to bring you andrewandtodd.com. Andrewandtodd.com are doing loans. They are doing loans, even though the market has not yet fully stabilized. If you're buying a house, if you're refinancing a house, go to andrewandtodd.com or call them at 888-888-1172. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They are sponsors of this program. They are terrific guys. I have known Andrew for 20 plus years, great Christian guy that I did Bible study with for 20 years. Ditto Todd. They are not 20 years. I've only known Todd 7. 888-888-1172. Now, the overseas markets were not good overnight. Japan was down almost 4.5 points. I have no idea what the markets are going to do today, but interest rates are stabilizing. Find out what you can do for your home, your refinance. If you're going to purchase a house, andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. Coming right back, America. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Can't go wrong with Jimmy Buffett. Give you a little smile. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to assure you, inform you, and encourage you every single day on the Hugh Hewitt Show. It's why I'm so thankful when we get a new affiliate like we did this week, 92.9 in the border of Tennessee, the Tri-Cities area, the border of Tennessee and Virginia. And 92.9 is a terrific station. And I am so happy to be on in Bristol and in Johnson City. The Tri-City area is full of smart people. And the folks at Tri-Cities WFHG FM, Super Talk 92.9, are Kingsport, Johnson City, and Bristol. First two in Tennessee, third in Virginia. Do you know why we're adding affiliates? Do you know why? Because I tell you the truth. I do not slam people. I have a Christian worldview which is deeply embedded in me. I'm an evangelical Roman Catholic Presbyterian. I'll tell you about that another time. But you can trust me. That's why people are listening to this show in numbers greater than ever before. And I appreciate your trust. And I get what the president is trying to do, and I want you to understand what he's trying to do. I want to replay cuts 18 and 19. This is the president with one of his foils, Jim Acosta, who cannot lay a glove on him. And the president yesterday used a quiet approach to Jim Acosta. Cut number 18.
Comments about what could have happened and the actions that you took. Is there any fairness to the criticism that you may have lulled Americans into a false sense of security when you were saying things like it's going to go away?
Well, it is.
And that sort of thing. But
Jim, it's going away.
But when you were saying
it's going to go away, hopefully at the end of the month, and if not, it hopefully will be soon after that.
But hasn't your thinking on this evolved?
Jim, it is going away.
Hasn't your thinking on this evolved? You're taking it more seriously now.
I think from the beginning, my attitude was that we have to give this country. I know how bad it was. All you have to do is look at what was going on in China. It was devastation. And look at the numbers from China, those initial numbers coming out from China. But, I read an article today, which was very interesting. They say, we wish President Trump would give more bad news. Give bad news. I'm not about bad news. I want to give people hope. I want to give people a feeling that we all have a chance. I mean, when you saw the numbers, and when John and all of you saw those numbers, and you're saying 120,000 people, you mean that's good? 100,000 dead people within a short period of time. I want to give people a feeling of hope.
Now, he went on to explain more to Jim Acosta. Cut number 19. He uses the word, I want you to listen to this, he uses the word cheerleader, which he first used with me in June of 2015 when he was candidate Trump. He's always had the same vision of the presidency. Cut number 19.
I want to be positive. I don't want to be negative. I'm a positive person. Somebody said, I wish you'd be more negative. They literally have that. It's in one of the wonderful newspapers today. I wish you'd be more negative. Well, this is really easy to be negative about. But I want to give people hope, too. I'm a cheerleader for the country. We're going through the worst thing that the country's probably ever seen. Look, we had the Civil War. We lost 600,000 people, right? Here's the thing. Had we not done anything, we would have lost many times that. But we did something, and so it's going to be hopefully way under that. But, we lose more here potentially than you lose in world wars as a country. So there's nothing positive, there's nothing great about it, but I want to give people in this country hope. I think it's very important.
That is the key. He is being a cheerleader because and repetition. Why do we go 2 hours? Because not everyone is carrying it, not everyone is tuned in, and everybody needs to hear stay home, 30 days to slow the spread, and they need to know there's hope. That is the president's job right now, to be a cheerleader, and he's a hell of a cheerleader. All right? And the White House press corps, get with the program, ask questions we need to hear the answers to, stop playing gotcha, and get with the program. It's one country. Everybody is vulnerable. It's one world. Everybody is vulnerable. And that's why you listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Ted Cruz. Good morning, Senator. How are you and your family? Everyone doing well?
Hugh, good morning. We're doing terrific, safe and healthy. How about you?
Everybody is great. And a couple of questions. First as a friend, then as a senator. I appreciate Texas raising the Ohio Burgee over the Alamo yesterday. I think that was very cool.
Well, these are extraordinary times.
Well, don't you approve of that?
Sure.
Okay, April Fool's, Senator. Gotcha. All right, now I want to move on to the serious stuff.
I just figured I'd roll with it.
All right, you're a good man. We had the leader on yesterday. He said impeachment interfered with preparedness. I do not know. Now, this is your con law scholar hat. I do not know how anyone could argue it didn't, because as a matter of constitutional law, you were obliged in January, upon receipt of the delayed articles, to go into session on impeachment. It had to, as a matter of physical time, as physics impacted the Senate's ability to be prepared. Agree or disagree?
Oh, of course it did. But impeachment is a symptom. It's not the cause. Yes, impeachment absorbed just about every waking moment for every member of the Congress for a couple of months, and it absorbed a lot of waking moments from the administration as well. But the reason we went down that rabbit hole is the all-consuming partisanship that is driving congressional Democrats, and that means even if we hadn't been doing impeachment, the House would have been attacking the president. It's the only thing on their agenda. So if you wave a magic wand and imagine some world where they don't happen to impeach the president at the end of last year, they still would have been doing relentless investigations, and there still was zero interest manifested by either Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the coronavirus outbreak, in anything problematic occurring in China, in the Chinese Communist government's cover-up of the coronavirus outbreak. And so it is hard to see a scenario. Right now, you don't have congressional Democrats focused on doing the jobs their constituents elected them. Instead, everything remains, even in the midst of an epidemic, everything remains about attacking Trump instead of doing their jobs.
Now, to that end, more in sorrow than in anger, because I like Neera Tanden. I have done a lot of work with her. She is the president of the Center for American Progress. She describes herself as a progressive Indian-American feminist mom wife. I think she's wonderful. She's smart. She's wrong. She's not rotten. She's wrong. But this morning, Jake Tapper tweeted out a Politico story. The Trump administration has decided against reopening the Obamacare enrollment. Blah, blah, blah. Neera tweets, "They are monsters." That's her whole tweet.
Yeah.
I think that is emblematic of the times in which we live. And at this time, this is no April Fool's joke like I began the segment with. This is serious.
Yeah.
People have to stop this, Senator Cruz.
Look, there is a hatred and a bitterness and an ugliness in our politics today that's really unhealthy, that I grieve for our country. It wasn't too long ago that we had the State of the Union address, and we saw Democrats, many of them refused to stand for the president when he entered, refused to stand and applaud what was at the time incredible economic results, the lowest unemployment in 50 years, the lowest African American and Hispanic unemployment ever recorded, and the Democrats wouldn't applaud for that. And we saw Nancy Pelosi stand up at the end of the speech and ripped the president's speech into little pieces. I mean, I was probably sitting 50 feet away from Nancy when she did that. That was just sad. I mean, I went to multiple State of the Union addresses Barack Obama gave. I disagreed with Barack Obama on a great many policy issues. I think he was supporting policies that were harmful to this country. And yet I stood up every time. I applauded. I was respectful because I respect the office of the presidency, and even more fundamentally, I respect the American people that elected him. There is a derangement that the left has given into where Orange Man bad is the only thing they can see. It colors everything else. And listen, Hugh, you know, I think it's fair to say my relationship with Donald Trump has had its ups and downs.
I've got some Trump tattoos as well, Senator.
So I can understand frustration people might have with him or disagreement on something he might say or do. I understand that. But the pathological fury and rage that no matter what the president's doing, that their only instinct, it's Pavlovian. Whatever happens, attack Trump is all they have. And you know what? It's not just Trump. It's gotten to the point that there's also, I mean, we see it in our communities with this bitterness of someone who disagrees with you politically is the enemy, as you noted. She tweeted earlier today, you know, is the enemy, and you know, we must unfriend them on Facebook. We must not speak with them. I think everyone just needs to relax. Look, if your politics disagree, I've got a lot of friends. I remember when I was in college, and I was a college debater. I was the chairman of the Conservative Party in our debating society. A very good friend of mine was the head of the Liberal Party, and we would debate every week. We'd have, you know, big policy disagreements, and then we'd go out and get a beer. And you know, and he'd call me a fascist. I'd call him a socialist, and we'd get another beer. I mean, like, ratchet down a little bit and treat each other as human beings, particularly during a global health crisis and an economic crisis, both of which have everyone scared. Now is not the time for the relentless partisanship that has characterized the last 3.5 years.
I agree. Two of my oldest friends with whom I am talking continually through this crisis, Mark Guerin and Dan Poneman. The former was the deputy chief of staff for Bill Clinton and his head of his Peace Corps. The latter was the deputy energy secretary for President Obama. All I do is care about my friends. They're just wrong. They're just not. They're not rotten. They're wrong, and we got to get back to that. Let me talk about now the CARES Act, because you are zooming in on how this helps people, and I want people to understand what it does for them. You have the floor, Senator Cruz.
Well, last week we passed over $2 trillion in emergency relief legislation. Let me start by saying, listen, the price tag is a big deal. $2 trillion is an enormous amount of spending for the federal government. That's about 10% of our national debt that we spent in one day. And in ordinary circumstances, that never would have happened. These are not ordinary circumstances. This is a crisis, a public health crisis, and also a devastating economic crisis, as millions of Americans have lost their jobs. And unfortunately, it looks to get worse before it gets better. What we included in the legislation was emergency relief, trying to target the populations that are really, really hurting. And I say, I don't call it a stimulus package. I call it a relief package, because it's designed to help people who are hurting as a direct consequence of government policies that have been implemented to stop this global pandemic. So one very important element of the bill is individual relief. Every American in the country, if you make $100,000 or less, you're getting a check in the mail from the U.S. government. If you make $75,000 or less, you're going to get a check for $1,200 per adult. That means a couple making $150,000 or less will get a check for $2,400. And for kids, you get $500 per kid. So a couple with 3 kids will be getting a check for $3,900. That's real money. That's designed to provide relief to a family that's worried, how do I make the next rent check? Maybe you've been laid off. Maybe you're sitting at home going, okay, I got bills that are coming due. My daughter's braces, I got to pay for those. What do I do? That's designed to be an emergency bridge loan to people who are hurting. That's one very important part of the bill. Another very important part of the bill is for small businesses. Small businesses all across the country are going out of business or on the verge of going out of business. This bill provides $377 billion in emergency loans to small businesses. Those are coming through the Small Business Administration, and they're being implemented, they're being administered through your local banks, through your community banks, through the same bank your business has been working with in the past, if they're an accredited small business lender. You have a guaranteed loan up to $10 million, and this is for any business that has 500 employees or fewer. And here's the part that's critical. If those loan proceeds are used to pay salaries, if they're used to pay rent or mortgage for your business, if they're used to pay utilities, the basic cost of the small business, then those loans will be forgiven. In other words, they become grants. This is designed to help all of the restaurants and bars and nail salons and hardware stores and movie theaters, help them keep their employees on payroll, keep a paycheck coming. And this is designed to be a bridge loan to get us through this economic crisis. It won't solve the problem. To solve the problem, we've got to solve the global pandemic. We've got to get people out of their houses and back to work. Once we solve that problem, demand comes back, and all those small businesses have customers again. But as we move through that time, this bridge loan is designed to stave off bankruptcy, keep small businesses solvent, and keep millions of Americans getting their paychecks.
Now, Senator, there will be a phase 4. The leader doesn't want to do it quickly. I've talked to your colleagues, Senators Blunt and Sullivan, this morning. They know eventually there will be one. In the interim, whether by executive order or in phase 4, I want a bond campaign like World War II or World War I. I want a pandemic bond so that every citizen in small denominations can help pay for this tab, which is enormous. What do you think about modeling a pandemic bond campaign or a public health bond campaign or the moral equivalent of war campaign on what we did in World War II and World War I?
I think it's a good idea. I think there are many lessons we can learn from wartime efforts. We are facing a challenge that is, it is very much a wartime effort. It is possible, as the president told the American people yesterday, it is possible that we will have a death toll that exceeds the American death toll of many wars. This is an enemy that is invisible. It's an enemy that we don't know how far it's spreading. We can't tell if someone is asymptomatic. We can't tell yet if they're carrying it. And it's an enemy that, in terms of our economy, the policies the government has put in place to keep people safe, of shutting down businesses, shutting down schools, having people work from home, those policies make sense from a public health perspective, but they also have an unprecedented impact on the economy. We have never shut down the U.S. economy to the extent we have in the last couple of weeks. If Congress hadn't acted at all, if we hadn't had this emergency relief bill, I think we could very easily be looking at unemployment rates of 20, 30%. Numbers, I mean, those are Great Depression numbers. Those are numbers you and I haven't lived through. And so I think we ought to approach it with the seriousness of a wartime effort, with the seriousness of what are the resources we need, how do we marshal those resources, how do we mobilize them, and defeating the global pandemic has to be our priority. We can do that. We can do that by focusing on testing and protective gear. We can do that by focusing on equipment and vaccines and a cure. That's where my focus is, but at the same time, relief for people who need help.
Senator Ted Cruz, always a great pleasure to talk to you. Keep coming back. Follow him at Ted Cruz on Twitter. Follow me to the next segment, America. It is The Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. Senator Cruz went a little bit long. I did not remind you about ReliefFactor.com, so I want to do that. They're a great sponsor of the show. I'm in the ReliefFactor.com studio, and you can get for $19.95 the 3-week starter pack that will get you through changing up your muscle group use during this period of moving from the gym to walking and running. ReliefFactor.com is what you need. Just go and get it. I'm so pleased now to illustrate the best side of America because Troy Downing is the owner of Rye Distillery. It's in Bozeman, Montana. I've never talked to Troy before, but I read about him, and what Rye Distillery is doing is great. Troy Downing, welcome. Good to have you on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on.
Now, Troy, I don't drink, so I don't even know what rye is. What the heck is rye?
Well, rye is a whiskey, but is made mostly, ours is mostly corn, and then it's got some malted barley and some malted rye, which gives it its flavor. But we do a bourbon, we do some vodkas, we do a number of things. Wild rye in the name is actually it's a wild grass that the distillery is named after.
Okay, so tell us what you've done with your distillery in Bozeman, Montana, because I think this illustrates what Americans all across the country are doing.
Well, thanks for asking. This has been really an interesting journey. You know, my wife and I, we've been blessed with, lots of things, and one is this opportunity. One of our partners is a PhD in organic chemistry, and he noticed that the active ingredient in hand sanitizer was ethanol, and ethanol is exactly what we produce. And so we had a bunch of ethanol in the back, and we decided, let's start making hand sanitizer for our community, just handing it out for free to anybody that came up and wanted a personal bottle. And so we started producing this, and the word got out, and the next thing we know, we get a call from the county. And they wanted to purchase some for their first responders, and they wanted to be able to just throw it into their patrol cars so that when they had contact with the public, they obviously don't have a place to wash their hands, so they would be able to use that. And so then that grew, and we started getting fire departments and police departments and just all these first responders, hospitals, caregivers started reaching out. So we just started ramping up production. And one of the good things about this is, we have a tasting room at the distillery, and as you are well aware, bars and restaurants are all closed down. So we had an opportunity to keep our employees employed. And I got to tell you, they're not just happy to still have a job, but they're so happy to be part of an organization that's helping the community. And it just makes you feel good to see everybody in there producing something for the community. And one of the things that was really interesting to me is how deep this goes in not just the front lines, not just our first responders and our caregivers, but also just in the wheels of commerce. We had companies call us that needed to, purchase. Well, here's a good example. A sanitation company needed to purchase. They wanted a couple of 55-gallon drums. We're asking why. They said that they service these porta potties for construction sites, and they said legally they need to take them down if they don't have sanitizer, which closes down the construction sites and displaces hundreds of construction workers. So now we're supplying these, critical businesses that need this to survive. And watching this all come together, we went from a micro distillery to our first week, we switched to production of hand sanitizer and distributed the equivalent of 37,300 personal bottles of hand sanitizer. And I got to tell you, it's growing by the day, and just
now,
makes
Troy,
people smile.
That's amazing. But I know Montana a little bit because my friend Jan Janura runs the Wild Adventure, TWA.US, I believe, TWA.US. So I've been to Ennis. I've driven from Bozeman. I've flown from Jackson Hole. I know Montana. How in the heck are you distributing this stuff? It's a big place with not a lot of roads.
Well, actually, that's a good question because we had an emergency request from a hospital in Glendive, which is probably a six and a half hour drive from us, and they got the Montana Highway Patrol to help relay 2 buckets of hand sanitizer out of them. So they came and did that, relayed it out there, and then the next day, So that's going east. The next day, we got a request from Kalispell going northwest, and for the Kalispell Police Department and for a care facility up there. And the Highway Patrol came and did exactly the same thing. They just relayed it all the way out there. So this is a prime example of, private industry, community, and government agencies coming together to help solve a problem.
Public-private partnership. I cannot tell you how inspiring that is. I hope everyone takes the example of Troy Downing, owner of Rye Distillery, and follows him. Follow him on Twitter at Troy Downing, DOWNING-MT. For the Steeler fan, that means Montana. Troy Downing MT on Twitter. Keep making the hand sanitizer, Troy, and God bless you. Hey, all of you. Adam, thank you. Ben, thank you. Generalissimo, thank you. Our essential employees are here every day to bring you what you need every day. Assurance, information, encouragement. We'll do it again tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.